Welcome to the News Review on Press TV. Police in the French city of Nantes have fired tear gas and used water cannons to disperse demonstrators protesting against the government's pension reform plan. Several other cities, including Bordeaux, Marseille, Toulouse, and the capital Paris, were also the scenes of mass rallies on the fourth day of cross-sectoral protests. Tens of thousands of workers from dozens of professions participated in the mobilization. Thursday also marks the 36th day of a nationwide transport strike against President Macron's planned pension reforms. Rail services have been disrupted and schools closed due to the protracted strike. The industrial action is the longest in the country's history. Let's now get some more insight on this. So I'll be joined by a correspondent, Ramin Mazaheri from Paris, and also Gearóid Ó Colmáin, author and journalist, also from Paris. Good to see you, gentlemen. Let's go to Ramin first. Ramin, walk us through the developments happening in France today.
Well, what we have today is the fourth day of nationwide protests and strikes, and that's even though it's day number 36 of the so-called general strike. So that really shows you that this general strike has not been very general. In fact, it has really basically all fallen on the shoulders of the public transport workers. It's basically come down to train conductors refusing to work, and this has caused great problems for Paris. But it has not caused, major economic, negative consequences. And outside of Paris, it has not really been very disruptive at all. However, we are starting something of a Act 2 of the general strike. Tuesday was only the fourth day that the government actually sat down to talk with unions. They're going to sit down again tomorrow. So we have, 36 days of general strikes, but only 5 days of negotiations and only 4 days of nationwide protests. So in many ways, unions are starting to come under fire for really sort of poorly leading something that, many people wanted. People have been waiting for this general strike for, the entire age of austerity. But here, it hasn't been very general at all. What the government has done is they have refused to, sit down. And then when they have sit down, even on Tuesday, these unions report that the government is not willing to negotiate on any of the, major bones of contention. So there's kind of no doubt that this strike is going to go on for probably weeks longer, maybe even into February, and it's already the longest labor movement in French history. Last thing I'll say, there's a very simple way for Macron to win. All he has to do is drop his raising of the retirement age by 2 years, because if he does that, he will win over towards, for his radical, unprecedented universal pension system based on points, which nobody really understands, including the government, because the nation's largest union has said that they are in favor of that, but not raising. So Macron can really sort of break the back of this labor movement by compromising, but that's not what Macron is known for. He's known as being President Jupiter, President Jupiter, the president of the rich, and with total control over Parliament and total control over his very, very young party. He hasn't had to compromise yet, and it doesn't look like he's going to anytime soon.
Okay, thank you for that. Now let's go to Gearóid Ó Colmáin. Mr. Colmáin, people have made their voices heard. It's not a first time. For umpteens of times they took to the streets in several parts of the country. The government knows what they want. Now the question is, does Paris really care about people's demands?
No, and this government, the Macron regime, was put in power by Brussels to institute a total liberalization of the French economy, and to subordinate that economy to international finance capital. And so Macron is the representative of that oligarchy. And until that oligarchy is challenged, until its existential basis is challenged, there will be no real change. The reform, what is not being discussed really in the pension reform crisis, is the huge demographic crisis facing not just France but Europe, where you have an aging population. You are now almost below replacement levels in terms of infant, in terms of demographics in France and in other countries, and that's obviously going to become a major crisis by mid-century, where you could have a situation whereby half the population are old, essentially, and you will not have enough people working to pay the pensions. That, and of course the fact that the state, the French state, particularly since joining the euro, but going back to the financial reform of 1973, which requires the French state to borrow money from international bondholders to finance the French economy. The fact that that's the situation here means that the state does not have any sovereignty. It does not have even the capacity to plan the economy. So you have a deindustrialization taking place in the French economy, and at the same time this aging population. These two aspects are not really being discussed in the media here. They're talking about the technicalities of the reform, and without actually going to the basis of the problem, which is globalization itself. This process of not promoting the family, not promoting children, and then basically the state not being in the public service, not having a philosophy of the public comes first. For the French state, it is the international bondholders and the oligarchy which comes first, and they don't need pensions. They don't need state-sponsored pensions. They've already got billions of dollars stacked away in foreign bank accounts in Switzerland and other places. And so they don't care about what people suffer.
Okay, appreciate your comments. We had our correspondent Ryan Mazzari and also Gearóid Ó Colmáin, author and journalist, both of them joining us from Paris with their comments and perspective. And that's the end of this news review. Thank you for watching.